Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am so excited to dive into this one with you. Today, we're cracking open what scientists call the biological black box. When we think about solving a case, we usually picture fingerprints, DNA swabs, or digital footprints, right? But what happens when all of that is just gone? Well, today we're exploring medical legal identification and forensic osteology to see exactly how our bones act as this incredible, enduring record of our lives.
Seriously, think about this for a second. How do we figure out who someone is when the traditional clues are completely wiped away? In situations like severe decomposition or a massive natural disaster, those usual methods, like a visual ID or just checking someone's wallet, they totally fail us. The soft tissue is gone, the context is lost, and that is exactly the problem today's scientific principles were built to solve.
So here's our game plan for today. We'll start with identification basics, move into an intro to forensic osteology, learn how to build a biological profile, analyze trauma and pathology, and finally wrap it all up with a final course recap.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, Identification Basics, Giving Names Back.
Before we even look at a bone, we need to zoom out a bit. Why does this matter? Well, giving a victim their name back is incredibly high stakes. There's a core definition you'll absolutely want to lock in for your notes: medical legal identification. This is the application of medical and scientific principles and establishing the identity of living or deceased individuals for legal purposes. Basically, it's using hardcore science to figure out exactly who someone is, so the legal system can actually function. We're turning biological data into legal certainty.
And what's wild is just how broad these objectives actually are. It's not just about solving murders on TV. We use these principles to identify victims of crime, sure, but also disasters and accidents. We determine the characteristics of unknowns to assist investigations and judicial proceedings. But let's bring it back to real life for a second. Think about providing evidence for civil and administrative matters. If a family loses a loved one in a terrible accident, they need a legal death certificate to handle life insurance, settle the estate, and honestly, just to start finding closure. That civil process literally cannot happen without a scientific medical legal ID first.
So this science works on a massive scale. Locally, it's an absolute must for homicides and missing persons cases, but it scales all the way up globally to mass disasters, human rights investigations, and armed conflicts. It's even used in exhumation cases to dig up past truths, and it provides vital evidence in cases involving our most vulnerable, like child abuse and human trafficking investigations. It's really heavy, important stuff.
So your main takeaway for this first part is this: medical legal identification is the absolute first step in bringing closure and justice across legal, civil, and criminal cases. Without a name, the whole process stalls.
Moving on to Section 2, Intro to Forensic Osteology, Nature's Hard Drive.
If getting an ID is our main goal, then forensic osteology is our go-to tool when the rest of the evidence is gone. We're zooming in on the skeleton now. Forensic osteology is the scientific study of human bones for legal purposes. It involves examining skeletal remains to determine a biological profile, trauma, and pathology. Think of it like a giant USB drive. Your bones are literally recording data every single day of your life. Long after soft tissue is gone, that physical data is still there, locked in the bone, just waiting for an expert to read it.
Let me throw a quick question your way. In any skeletal investigation, why do you think figuring out if a bone is human or animal is always step number one? Kind of makes you think about the underlying logic of an investigation, right?
Well, the answer comes down to the basic scope of the investigation. Before we can ask who someone is, we have to be absolutely sure we're dealing with a human. An untrained eye might look at a hunter's discarded deer bones in the woods and think it's a crime scene. If it's an animal, boom, the criminal investigation stops right there. If it is human, we immediately pivot to figure out if the remains are adult or juvenile. And we count how many individuals are actually there. Are we looking at one person or a group? These are the absolute baseline facts we have to establish.
So your takeaway here: osteology narrows down the search fast. By first confirming if remains are human and establishing the basic scope, investigators know exactly what kind of operation they're dealing with.
Section 3. Building a biological profile. The 4 pillars.
Okay, so now we know we have human remains. This is where we open up the practical toolkit a forensic anthropologist uses. The core concept here is just brilliantly simple, but super rigorous. The biological profile translates skeletal markers directly into a physical description of the deceased person. We are essentially taking the data from nature's hard drive and printing out a highly educated scientific guess of what this person looked like when they were alive. We use 4 specific pillars to build this profile. First, we estimate sex, usually by looking at the shape of the pelvis or the skull. Second, we estimate age at the time of death, maybe by checking out tooth development or seeing how the bones have fused. Third is stature, or height, which we can estimate by measuring the length of long bones, like your femur. And finally, we estimate population affinity, or ancestry. When you stack these 4 pillars together, it's a real game changer. You can go to a missing persons database and say, hey, we're looking for a male, around 35 to 40 years old, about 5'10". You've just filtered out thousands of non-matches and gotten exponentially closer to a real identity.
The big takeaway for this section is that the biological profile takes cold, hard skeletal data and translates it into actionable demographics. It bridges the gap between science and the human element, giving us a real shot at finding a name.
Section 4, Trauma and Pathology, Reading the Bone's History.
We've talked about figuring out who the person was. Now we have to figure out what happened to them. Different forces leave incredibly distinct signatures on our skeleton. Blunt force injuries will shatter or compress a bone in a totally different way than sharp force injuries, which leave these very clean cuts or gouges. Gunshot wounds leave really specific entry and exit fracture patterns. And thermal injuries, like fire, literally cause the bone to shrink, crack, and change color. By reading these signatures, experts can essentially reverse engineer the exact cause of death.
But hey, it's not just about how they died, it's about the life they lived before that moment. That's where pathological assessment comes in. Osteologists look at fractures, and this is crucial. They can actually tell the difference between antemortem injuries, which are injuries that happen during life and show signs of healing, and postmortem damage that occurred after death. They're also looking for bone diseases or congenital abnormalities. Why? Because a healed broken arm from when you fell off a bike in middle school or a unique spinal trait acts like a physical fingerprint. It helps piece together the unique story of that person's life.
So, your takeaway for Section 4. Bones do not lie. Trauma and pathology analysis reveals the cause of death, uncovers those antemortem injuries, and details a person's underlying disease history. It is literally a permanent physical record.
And that brings us to Section 5, Final Course Recap, the unbreakable evidence.
We have covered a ton of ground in this explainer, so let's lock it all in. Here's the rapid-fire review so you can summarize this without even glancing at your notes. Step 1, we establish the need for medical legal ID to aid a legal or civil case. Step 2, when normal clues are gone, we use osteology to confirm we actually have human remains. Step 3, we build that biological profile, sex, age, stature, and ancestry, to filter our missing persons list. And Step 4, we analyze trauma and pathology to understand their health history and figure out what happened to them.
I want to leave you with a quote from our source material today because it just perfectly hits the nail on the head. Bones may survive long after soft tissues decompose and can provide information regarding identity, cause of death, and evidence of abuse. They are, without a doubt, the unbreakable evidence.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with one final thought to chew on. If bones are nature's hard drive, storing the undeniable truth of a person's life and death, what missing pieces of human history do you think they'll unlock next? The applications here are just limitless. Keep asking those big questions, keep studying the evidence, and I will catch you in our next explainer.